Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Now let's start the fanfic. Kabuto had been dealt his fair share of shit situations in life. No one who knew what he had been through could deny that. Even now, tending to Orochimaru as the Sanin's personal medic, could be seen as an extremely unfortunate time in his life. When he had joined up with the Sanin, he had never imagined he would end up just being another tool for someone to take advantage of. But much like Danzo and Sasori, Orochimaru was proving himself to be no better than any other power-hungry fool that flaunted their power and influence. Kabuto wasn't sure why he had expected better. Perhaps it was just his positive naivety at the time. Oh well, it no longer mattered. Such thoughts of ever finding someone who didn't use him as such were now long dead and buried. He frowned deeply as he was forced to dodge another clone of Naruto. The infuriating orange-clad boy was simply too annoying to fight one-on-one. Not that it was ever a one-on-one fight. Just how many clones could he make? With the swiftness and precision of a surgeon, he sliced through 4 of the clones with his hands, using the smoke clouds from their dispelling to creep forward and cut down 3 more. The only thing he found at least partly enjoyable about this fight was the ferocity in which Naruto was attacking him. Kabuto would be the first to admit that not being underestimated by an opponent for once was somewhat flattering. He would certainly not enjoy killing the boy now, and if possible, he would make it a quick and painless death out of simple respect. The girl, however, he rolled out of the way of a large blade of wind that sliced deep into the ground where he was. The smoke cleared and Kabuto glared at Temari in annoyance. The girl's presence here was an unpleasant surprise. The ground shook as the battle between the Sanin continued on in the distance, their summons now entering the mix. Kabuto needed to sort these 2 children out and return to Orochimaru quickly. No matter how pointless his service to the man might be, Kabuto didn't have many options available to him at the moment. Charging at Temari, he planned to take her out of the equation first, her long-range fighting being the biggest hindrance to him. Ducking and weaving around a small group of Naruto clones, he systematically slaughtered each as he passed by until he was nearly within reach, only to suddenly back off, narrowly missing the chakra scalpel aimed at his neck. With a smile he turned his attention to his third opponent. 3 against 1 seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? He said, adjusting his glasses. This was a bad situation for him to be in. Kabuto knew he could destroy any one of these 3 on their own, but together they proved to be a nuisance. Tsunade's apprentice alone was already a big enough hurdle to begin with. The likes of you don't get to talk about things being fair, Shizune said, both of her hands glowing green as she lowered into a fighting stance. Being set upon by another group of clones, Kabuto dispatched them just in time to dodge another blade of wind before he found himself backpedaling as Shizune charged him. Blocking and weaving between each of her strikes, Kabuto could only smirk as he noted all the holes in her form. All this time away from the village had clearly not done the woman any favors. Catching one of her hands by the wrist, he backhanded her other hand away and landed a single open palm strike to the woman's chest, watching in delight as she collapsed to her knees. Turning his attention back to the other 2, he smiled. Now then, where were Arg? Kabuto cried out and leapt away, clutching at his now bleeding side. Glaring back at Shizune, he found her still on her knees, a smirk of her own now on her face and a lightly glowing hand covered in his blood. He hissed through his teeth as his own hands began healing his wound. How she was still able to move after he messed with her nervous system like that was impressive. Clearly, he had underestimated her. Don't forget about us, Temari yelled, slashing at Kabuto with her small fan, interrupting his healing and putting him on the defensive yet again. Kabuto was seething internally. Every chance he got to make use of an opening in Temari's attacks, he was interrupted by more clones. To think Naruto was tactical enough to cover all the girl's blind spots with sacrificial clones while waiting in the background. Neither of the blondes were giving him a chance to breath or recover. At this rate, the medic nin would run out of chakra or blood before he landed another decent strike. It was impressive. Rasengan. Kabuto twisted himself to avoid the swirling ball of death aimed for his head. Lashing out with his scalpel yet again, he expected the clone to pop, only to be met with the sensation of his hand cutting deep into flesh before a crushing grip ensnared his wrist. With wide eyes, Kabuto watched Naruto grin wildly, the Rasengan dissipating from his hand as he twisted mid-air and forced the medic nin's arm into a painful outstretched position. Temari. Now! Naruto yelled. Eyes wide in realization, Kabuto forced his body against the arm hold, dislocating his shoulder in the process as he tried to pull free, but it was too late. With a swift motion, the girl's fan, coated in wind chakra, came down on where he once stood and where his arm now was, slicing through flesh and bone like a kunai through water. With a squelch, Kabuto felt his limb pull away from his upper arm, held by an all-too-happy Naruto as he and Temari put distance between them again. Holding his bleeding stump, he glared at Naruto. He would make that little bastard pay for this, the girl too. Naruto grinned as he held up the severed arm and dropped it as his feet. He winced as he held his own side, blood seeping through his fingers. Kabuto had cut deep, but it wasn't enough to stop him thankfully, only slow him down. A fair trade-off considering what Naruto had taken in return. His focus turned to Shizune, who was now back on her feet, obviously overcoming whatever technique Kabuto had used on her. That was a relief. If the woman had died out here, then Tsunade truly would be a lost cause. He didn't want to deal with an inconsolable Sannin right now. Glancing at Temari, he was glad to see her at the ready, blood dripping from her fan, clearly wanting to finish Kabuto here and now. It had been a surprise to see how well Temari and himself could work together with such short notice. Not to say it was perfect by any means, but their skill set was compatible for the moment. Naruto couldn't imagine how bad this fight might have been going otherwise. When Tsunade had dropped the bombshell of Orochimaru, it had been a simple matter to plan for the eventual clash. Jiraiya and Tsunade obviously taking their old teammate, with Naruto, Temari, and Shizune to distract, and if possible, eliminate, the snake's lackey. It had been assumed that Shizune would be doing the main share of the fight, not that that idea worked out too well. At least he had enough time to get the Rasengan down well enough to use. Now if only he could land it on Kabuto. Are you okay? Temari asked, eyeing Naruto's bloody side. Yeah, he said. Nothing that can't be fixed up after we finish this. He internally scoffed at even needing to be fixed in the first place. If Jiraiya would just undo his tampering of the seal, he would already be healing. The stupid old man would rather gamble with Naruto's life than risk the damn fox throwing another tantrum. I don't know if we will get another lucky shot like that again, Temari said, noting how pissed Kabuto looked now. Got any bright ideas? Naruto took a deep breath that hurt more than it should have. Think you can use some wind to throw me? He asked. Temari inspected her fan unsurely. It was so much smaller than her normal battle fan. She wasn't sure just how far she could push it without breaking it, and breaking it on the off chance of landing another hit wasn't in the cards. Without it she wouldn't be able to project her techniques the distance she needed to, and close combat with Kabuto would be a death sentence. It would be a one-shot sort of deal, but probably, she said. Hold on to it then. Keep your distance and check on Shizune, Naruto said, making a hand seal before another squad of clones surrounded him, all of them quickly heading back into the fray. At the very least he could keep Kabuto on his toes until Jiraiya and Tsunade finished off Orochimaru. Jiraiya grinned as he blocked another sloppy punch from his former teammate. Planting a kick to the man's middle, he sent him flying away and off the head of Gamabunta before going through hand seals. Bunta! Now! He yelled, spurring the giant toad to suddenly spew forth a stream of thick oil from its mouth. Hitting its intended target, the stream of oil saturated the giant snake summons, Manda, and began mixing with the expansive mud pit that Jiraiya had already turned the battlefield into. Toad oil flame bullet. Spewing forth his own stream of fire, Jiraiya watched on as the oil ignited and covered everything before them in a flame so hot it felt as if the very air around them was on fire. Manda hissed out in pain, thrashing and spooling his long body around in the mud in a desperate attempt to put the flames out before disappearing in a giant cloud of smoke. Orochimaru, having been unceremoniously dropped into the mud as his summons vanished, scowled as his own body was engulfed in the foul mixture of oil and flame. Crawling out of the mud and fire, he unhinged his jaw, a new and fresh version of himself shedding his former skin as it slithered from his mouth to escape the wounds. This day was not going how he wanted it to, and he had no one else to blame but Tsunade. The stupid cow couldn't have just come with him peacefully and saved everyone the trouble. Just what was taking Kabuto so long with those children? Don't tell me this is all you've got, Jiraiya said, Gamabunta dispelling behind him as Tsunade landed at his side. All that talk about becoming the most powerful ninja to live, and this is what you've become. Tsunade snorted. You couldn't even kill Sensei by yourself. Just give up, Orochimaru. Orochimaru smirked. That senile old fool is already dead. Just you wait. That forbidden jutsu he used will exact its price soon enough, he said, feeling some semblance of enjoyment at the confused looks on his old teammates' faces. Oh, did Sensei not tell you? Such a secretive fool he is. What are you talking about? Tsunade asked. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes at the snake. I had been curious how he managed to face off against not only you, but the reanimated first and second Hokage, he said. I bet you're just dying to tell us. Perhaps, Orochimaru said, but it is so much more fun to watch you squirm for now. Be sure to ask dear Sensei just what jutsu he used during our little fight when you get back to the village. He'll be honest with you, won't he? His oh so precious and loyal students. You're coming back with us, Orochimaru, Jiraiya said, getting ready to jump at the man again. You have a lot to answer for. Your choice, here and now, or back in Konoha. Orochimaru laughed. Still no more than a dutiful tool of Konoha, he said. Sensei must be so proud of you. His eyes turned to Tsunade. I would think carefully before you take the hat, Tsunade. The weight of Konoha's darkness weighs heavily on all who wear it. With that said, he vanished in a swirl of leaves. That slimy prick, Tsunade said. Come on, we can at least grab that little medic brat. Jiraiya frowned as he followed her, Orochimaru's warning repeating in his mind. He would have to speak to Sarutobi when he got back to Konoha. If anyone knew anything about the dark underhanded goings-on within Konoha, it would be Orochimaru, and Jiraiya couldn't help but feel he was being left out of a lot. He only hoped it wasn't anything that would follow Tsunade into the role. Naruto winced as he was kicked back by Kabuto, his clones popping out of existence as the older boy tore through them in a rage. Missing arm or not, Kabuto was still leagues above Naruto when it came down to it. No amount of outnumbering him was going to fix that if his clones couldn't hold up after a single good hit. He looked over towards the girls, Temari standing guard for Shizune while the older woman got her body back in order. He wished Shizune would hurry up. With a deep breath he took his stance again and stared down Kabuto. Surely Jiraiya and Tsunade would be here soon enough to end things. His eyes widened as Kabuto rushed him faster than he could follow. Jumping back just in time to avoid the first slash, he wasn't quick enough to avoid the second, bringing his arms up to block the downward cutting motion. Naruto grit his teeth, the chakra blade slicing deep into his forearms. The feeling in his hands quickly faded as the blood soaked into his jacket and his arms fell limp to his sides, proving useless to block the spinning kick that connected to his jaw and sent him crashing to the ground. I was going to kill you quickly out of respect, Naruto, Kabuto said, barely contained rage in his tone. But now, I think I'm going to take my time cutting you down. Back off, Temari yelled, jumping between them, her fan ready. Naruto, Shizune said, already at his side and glowing hands working fast to repair his arms. Are you okay? Naruto glared at the woman. Don't worry about me and kill him already, he shouted. With pleasure, Temari said, sending a blade of wind at Kabuto. Naruto watched as Temari continued her attacks, each one more focused on keeping the distance between the two than actually killing him. Not to say she wasn't trying. He had to give her credit for being so quick to cut Kabuto's arm off. His fingers twitched as Shizune continued healing him. She was good at that at least, but he wasn't sure if it was enough. He needed to get back in the fight and soon. It was unrealistic to think Temari could play keep away forever. Her jutsu and movements had already started to slow, and if Naruto was noticing that, then Kabuto absolutely saw it too. A loud crashing sound rung out over the fields, and everyone turned their attention to where the Sannin had been fighting. The giant snake was engulfed in flame, writhing in pain before suddenly dispelling, followed soon enough by the giant toad. That seemed promising. Oh, Kabuto, I leave such a simple task to you, and this is what happens. Orochimaru asked, appearing nearby and regarding the scene before him with clear disappointment. Perhaps you aren't as useful as I first thought. Kabuto grimaced at the realization that what his master was seeing was less than comforting. Being so grievously wounded by two genin of all things was humiliating enough, but to have his lord see his failings may as well have been a death sentence when Orochimaru was involved. With a hardened stare, he went for Temari once more, ignoring his pain as she let loose another, albeit significantly smaller, blade of wind that left a shallow gash in his leg. His steps didn't falter as he closed the distance, his once remaining hand reared back and aimed straight for the girl's chest. He may have failed to kill the others, and he might have lost an arm, but he would make sure to take far more from them before he had to depart. Naruto's eyes were wide and locked onto the older boy. He knew a suicide charge when he saw one. It was one of his personal favorites. A sinking feeling appeared in his stomach as he watched Temari's wind blade do nothing to stop Kabuto's charge. She had exhausted herself, and Kabuto was still much faster than her even if she hadn't. She was dead already. Naruto growled as he realized what was coming, what he was about to watch happen right in front of him. He didn't care if people died. He had killed before, seen others die before. But Temari wasn't just anyone. She was a nice enough girl, sure, but she was so much more than that. She was his key to a better life within Konoha. She was his ticket to getting the Hokage off his back, a chance to be more than just the Kyuubi Jinchuriki in the eyes of his village. Temari was not allowed to die, not now. Kabuto, however, he was living proof that Naruto was too weak on his own. Without the Kyuubi, he was nothing. If Naruto let this fight finish like this, he would never hear the end of it once he finally got the fox back. No, Kabuto had to die, here and now. And if Naruto had to die for that to happen, so be it. Without a thought, he brought his hands up into the best hand seal he could and locked his attention on Temari. With a burst of chakra and rush of wind, Naruto had just moments to take note of where he was before the air was knocked from his lungs. The taste of blood filled his mouth, and his heart felt like it had just been cut out of his chest. He smirked as the look of realization spread over Kabuto's face as he latched onto his wrist. Naruto wished he had access to the Kyuubi's chakra in this moment, but as a small and unstable Rasengan formed in his free hand, he figured this would have to be enough. With the last of his strength, he drove the ball of chakra into Kabuto's chest, flesh tearing and bone grinding away beneath it. Survive this, he said before the unstable Rasengan exploded, launching both away from each other. Naruto! Shizune cried, jumping up and running for the downed boy. Temari slumped to the ground where Naruto had been just seconds earlier, a strange sick feeling in her gut. Being on the receiving end of a replacement jutsu did not feel very pleasant at all. Holding back her urge to vomit, she watched on as Shizune began desperately healing Naruto. Did he mean to sacrifice himself for her like that? Or had it just been some suicidal last-ditch effort to kill Kabuto? She flinched as she felt someone land behind her, turning to see Jiraiya looking at her with concern. Temari, are you alright? He asked, looking at the ground where a decent amount of Naruto's blood still stained the grass. Temari nodded. I'm fine. This isn't my blood, she said, pointing to where Naruto and Shizune were. Go help Naruto. Tsunade, help me, Shizune yelled, her hands resting over Naruto's heart. His muscles had been severed, rendering his heart all but useless. If she couldn't repair the damage, Naruto would have only minutes to live, and that wasn't even taking into account the blood still flowing freely from his arms. Shizune needed help, and she needed it now, but as she looked up to her sensei, she couldn't help but feel her own heart sink at the image of the Sannin frozen in fear at the sight before her. Damn it, Tsunade. Now, Tsunade's hands trembled as she looked at Naruto, covered in his own blood, eyes lost in a distant lifeless stare, and not breathing. He looked dead. He was dead. Just like Dan, just like Nawaki. Tsunade. Shizune's words cut through her thoughts, her memories, bringing Tsunade back to her senses just enough to get her to shake her head free of such things. No, Naruto wasn't dead yet, and she'd be damned if she watched another person die in front of her, not when she could help it. Taking up position opposite Shizune, Tsunade quickly took over on healing the boy's heart while her apprentice quickly moved onto his arms. It would be a close call, but he was still there, Tsunade could feel it. A short distance away, Kabuto tried to get back to his feet, finding that his body was reaching its limits as his cellular regeneration jutsu was already well into effect. It wouldn't be able to regrow his missing arm, but it was doing a decent job of stopping the bleeding, as well as mending the large portion of his abdomen that Naruto's Rasengan had obliterated. To think the little brat could do so much damage, and in a suicide shot too. Oh well, Kabuto would have the last laugh. Even if Tsunade could somehow heal the damage he had done to the boy's heart, there was no way he could make a full recovery. Naruto would never get the chance to humiliate him like this again. My, Kabuto, Orochimaru said, appearing at the boy's side with a disappointed stare. Such a failure will incur a heavy toll. But I guess I can still find use of you yet. That little technique of yours is oh so fascinating. Kabuto seethed internally, realizing that his injuries would be a major setback for everything. Bowing his head low, he could only do his best to grovel for the time being and hope that got him far enough. Thank you, Lord Orochimaru. I will not fail you again. More like he couldn't afford to. Orochimaru would surely kill him if he proved to be useless, or even if he felt like it. Today had officially put him back to square one with the Sannin. Ensure that you don't, Orochimaru said, before turning his attention back to Tsunade and Jiraiya. I would like to say it's been fun to see you two again, but I would be lying. Since you seem to have your hands full, I'll leave you to it. Do say hello to Sensei for me. Jiraiya frowned as Orochimaru vanished with Kabuto but didn't make any moves to follow them. His attention quickly turned to Naruto, who at least looked like his was breathing again, even if it was weak and shallow. This shouldn't have been allowed to happen. He should have been better than this. They all should have been better than this. However, as bad as things were, there was a silver lining. Naruto had shown a willingness to sacrifice himself for Temari. That alone was enough to get a sense of hope building up in the Toad Summoner's chest. Maybe the boy wasn't as far gone as everyone thought. Maybe the Hokage's little scheme had some merit to it. Time would tell, but at least he had hope now. As soon as they were back in Konoha and things were back to some semblance of normal, Jiraiya vowed to do everything he could to bring out the best he could in Naruto. Be it as a shinobi, or just a person in general. And now, he had the perfect person to help him with that. Come on, Jiraiya said softly to Temari, picking the girl up carefully and walking towards the others. Why aren't you going after them? Temari asked. Jiraiya smiled. You and the brat are more important than trying to kill those two, he said. Besides, we'll get another shot at them. No doubt about it. Temari didn't exactly like that answer, but she wasn't going to argue with the man. It was kind of nice. In Suna, the mission always came first, as did putting down any threats to the village. To have someone put her life first for once, well, Temari wasn't going to complain at all. Turning her gaze down to Naruto, she let out a relieved breath in seeing that the medics were still working, although their urgency had faded. The gashes on his arms weren't bleeding anymore and were now bandaged thanks to Shizune, and his breathing had almost returned to normal with Tsunade's efforts. It didn't take away from the fact that Naruto had nearly died. The realization of what could have occurred here set in and left a weird feeling in Temari's gut. She didn't care about Naruto, not in any significant way for the moment, but she wouldn't just wish death upon him. He wasn't Anto her, and that went a long way considering their marriage predicament. Who knew what kind of pig she could get saddled with back in Konoha if he died, or worse, if Konoha somehow tried to blame her and Suna for their Jinchuriki's death. She knew she was lying to herself by trying to think of a political reason for her feelings. In truth, she didn't want Naruto to die. The same way she didn't want Gaara to die. They had both been through so much as Jinchuriki, and both deserved more in life. Her chances to help Gaara had passed her by, but she still had a chance to do some good for Naruto, if he let her. Until she could do that, he couldn't die, and she would do her best to make sure he accepted whatever she sent his way. It was the least she could do. We need to get back to Konoha, Tsunade said, finally feeling comfortable in Naruto's condition. She leveled a glare at Jiraiya. Don't think for a second this means I'm accepting the offer. I still need to talk to that old goat first. And you have some explaining to do as well. Jiraiya nodded. I understand, he said. Let's just get going. The kids have been through enough. It would be a long and silent walk back to Konoha for the group. Naruto shifted uncomfortably in the bed and concluded he was officially sick and tired of waking up and still being injured. Not having the Kyuubi to heal him properly was easily the most maddening thing in his life now. Jiraiya was a close second place, if only because the senile sage had dragged him on that mission that led to his being handed to him not once, but twice. He needed to make sure that didn't happen again. Taking a deep breath, he sighed loudly. Yep, definitely a hospital, but he could smell something else that made him feel relieved. Good to see you're not dead, he said, not opening his eyes to see his company. Temari scoffed. You're one to talk, she said, crossing her arms. What the hell were you thinking pulling a stunt like that? Do you have any idea what would happen to me if you died? They could have married me off to someone else instead, like the Uchiha, or worse, that Nara from the exams. She shuddered at the thought of being stuck with that know-it-all. She might have considered him as a possible interest if she ever decided to live the rest of her life never winning an argument. No thank you. Naruto was a much better option, even she could see that. Kabuto? Naruto asked. Still alive, Temari answered, noting the scowl on Naruto's face. You messed him up pretty good though from what I saw. Don't think he'll be bouncing back anytime soon if that's what you're worried about. Naruto's expression didn't improve. That should have killed him, he muttered in annoyance, only to shake his head and open his eyes to look at Temari. She was uninjured this time, so that was good he figured. No one would be hounding him doubly so for letting her get injured twice while out on the mission. Everyone else. Fine. Although Tsunade has been having screaming matches with almost everyone in the village, she said with a shrug. I'm not getting involved with it. Not my village, not my monkeys. Temari didn't care that Konoha was technically her village now. They couldn't force her to get involved in their politics any more than she absolutely had to. Also, it was Tsunade. The woman was scary, and from the moment they had set foot back inside Konoha she had been pissed. No one needed to put themselves in front of that. With a groan Naruto sat up, stretching his arms out and getting a feeling for his fingers again. Blocking with his arms like that had been a stupid idea, but at least he was healing well from it all. His eyes narrowed slightly as he reached into his mind, feeling around for the Kyuubi, for anything to let him know that the seal had gone back to normal. Nothing. He was still grounded, it seemed. He would have to have a serious talk with the old man about that. Hopping off the bed, Naruto was pleased to see that not only was Temari not telling him not to get up but was in fact pointing towards a fresh pair of neatly folded clothes for him to change into. Part of him had to wonder if the staff had done that or if it was her doing. Getting changed quickly, he chose to forego the hallways of the hospital, opting to instead jump out the window. What now? Temari asked, having followed him out the window and was now trailing behind him in a carefree manner, hands resting on the back of her head as she walked. Naruto sighed. I guess someone told you to keep an eye on me? He asked, getting a dumbfounded look from the girl. No. Temari shrugged. I don't do babysitting. Besides, I figured we could at least do our best to be seen together around the village for a while. Public appearances and all that, she said. Unless you have a problem with that. Naruto opened his mouth to say something but quickly caught himself. Actually, why not? He said, mulling the thought over in his head. The better things appeared to be going between them, the greater the likelihood that the Hokage would undo Jiraiya's handiwork. Anywhere you want to go? He asked. No, anywhere I can get some weapons. Temari asked, pulling out the small fan from her sash. The poor thing had held up well, but she didn't have enough control with her element nature to use such a delicate weapon yet. Small tears in the fabric between the spines were already forming, and Temari truly missed having the option to just bash someone over the head with something heavy. She needed her battle fan back. Might as well just check them all, Naruto said. Come on. Naruto led Temari deep into the market district of the village. As with all the major villages, weapon shops were in no short supply, but finding the right one for your needs was always a challenge. This time was no different. Store after store, the two were met with dead ends and empty promises. While some shopkeepers were straight to the point of admitting they didn't have anything suited to a wind chakra user, others tried to sell off other wares as just as good or better. It didn't take Naruto long to see Temari was losing her patience. It wasn't until they walked through the doors of a particularly small and unassuming weapons store that the day really got interesting. Naruto turned to glare at what was no doubt going to be another disgruntled shopkeeper ready to throw him out for being bad for business. Just what he needed. He quirked an eyebrow, however, as he saw one of the girls that had been in the Chunin exams. Pink shirt, brown hair done up in two neat buns, and brown eyes that were staring at Temari like a bull stared down a red flag. This is interesting, Naruto thought to himself. It wasn't every day that someone else was the focus of someone's ire in Konoha. Oh, Temari said, putting her hands up defensively. We should leave. Why? What are you doing here? Tenten asked heatedly, marching up to the blonde and pouting at her. I want a rematch. Temari blinked. Huh. Tenten crossed her arms. You heard me. Rematch. You and me. My pride demands it. Wait. You aren't mad at me. It was Tenten's turn to blink owlishly. For the exams? She asked, shaking her head. No. You beat me fair and square. But I'm pretty sure I figured out how to beat you for next time, so how about it? Wanna grab your fan and see if you still hold up? The looked over Temari's shoulder. Where is it? That's what we're here for, Naruto said, finally getting noticed. He could get used to people not paying attention to him in favor of Temari. Tenten paled slightly as she took a step back from the two blondes. She did her best to hide it with her well-practiced customer service smile, but it was too late. She had shown fear. What the hell was that guy even doing here? He never came here. What was Temari doing with him? This didn't bode well. Naruto frowned as he watched the girl back away. He didn't remember hurting or threatening her in the past. With a sigh he turned and began wandering the store. I'll leave you to it, he said. There was no reason for him to get in the way of her shopping if he could help it. You too, huh? Temari asked as she watched Naruto disappear around a corner. You aren't actually scared of him, are you? Tenten scoffed. Do you know who that is? My future husband. That's Naruto. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Tenten said, completely missing what Temari had said. He was in the year below me in the academy. He's unstable. Do you know how many kids he put in the hospital? Some of them dropped out. He nearly beat a kid to death once. I don't remember why, but that shouldn't matter. Even the teachers were wary of him. Not to mention the Chunin exams. You were there, didn't you see what he was? Wait, what did you say? Temari smirked. Putting kids in the hospital. Is that it? She thought. God help anyone in this village if they learned what Gaara used to do. She didn't think it would do anyone any good to mention what she had seen of Naruto and Gaara's fight. If people were already so careful around the guy now, who knew what they would think after that got out? That part would stay her little secret. I'm marrying him, she said, smiling at the horrified expression that spread across Tenten's face. She needed to buy a camera for when she told people. I know. He's a bit of a work in progress, but I think I'm wearing him down. He's not that bad really. Without a word, Tenten produced a small, curved dagger from seemingly nowhere and put it in Temari's hands. Keep this with you at all times. If he tries any funny business, castrate him, she said, her tone showing no signs of joking. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks, Temari said, handing the knife back. Tenten was alright in her books now. I just need a new battle fan. Don't suppose you have something like that laying around. No one else has anything, and this place came recommended. We don't stock any fans, Tenten said. Pulling a scroll out of her pouch, she unsealed a large battle fan and handed it to Temari. This is mine. You can borrow it until you get a new one. But if you break it, you buy it. Temari picked up the fan and snapped it open. It was almost identical to her old one, although it was missing the 3 purple circle pattern, instead having the image of a cherry blossom branch etched on it. Oh goody. Pink. That was all she needed. Why do you have a battle fan? She asked curiously. Maybe Tenten was a wind user as well. That would be cool. Someone in Konoha to train with properly would be perfect. Tenten grinned sheepishly. Well, funny thing, I actually ordered that one just after the Chunin exams, she said. After our fight, I just had to have one. It was so cool. Well, at least you have good taste, Temari said, closing the fan and handing it back. But if it's all the same, I might just wait until I can get a new one delivered from Suna. I can be a bit rough. Got anything good for channeling wind chakra? She didn't want to expand her weapon skills, there was no need, but it wouldn't hurt to have something for the time being to keep her half capable. Trench knives, Tenten said thoughtfully. One of the Jonin here buys a new set from time to time, so we always have a pair on hand. He uses them for wind chakra, can do some pretty cool stuff with them too if what he says is anything to go by. Interested? Can't hurt to look, Temari thought. It was good to know there was someone in the village that had a wind nature, and a Jonin too. Maybe they could teach her something while she had time to kill. Yeah, I'll bite. Let me see. In the back of the store Naruto could only look at the shelves and walls lined with weapons with an expression of bewilderment. Some of these things didn't even look usable, let alone useful. Thankfully, he didn't need to bother with such things. He was already the perfect weapon after all. No point in complicating things. Grabbing a resupply of kunai and shuriken, he ventured his way back to the front. Surely Temari would be done by now. The sight he walked in on was not what he expected. Temari stood there, a knuckle-duster-style trench knife in each hand, blades glowing with chakra, and a glimmer in her eyes that promised pain and suffering. Naruto could only grin at the sight. He liked that look on her. I'll take them, Temari said eagerly. How much? Tenten, not letting Naruto's expression go unnoticed, smiled brightly. Excellent. That'll be 40,000 ryo. Temari's eyes widened. That was more than some C-rank missions paid, what the hell? Actually, I think I'll do a rain check on that, she said, putting the knives back on the counter. It's not like you won't always have a pair to buy later. Naruto rolled his eyes. This was going to look so stupid. She'll take them, he said, placing the kunai and shuriken on the counter. And how much for these? With that, He placed 4 small rolls of notes on the counter and stared expectantly at Tenten, waiting for her to say something. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility for someone to say his money was no good, as stupid as that sounded. Tenten narrowed her eyes suspiciously but accepted the money regardless, quickly counting the notes. She had expected the daughter of a Kage, even a recently deceased one, to be able to afford such things, but certainly not someone like Naruto. How many missions was his team going on for him to throw this kind of cash around? Well, I'm not about to turn down a good sale, Tenten said, smiling as she placed the knives and other weapons into a carry case and slid it across to Temari. You can take the shuriken and kunai as a freebie with the knives to sweeten the deal. Naruto nodded and took the case before heading for the door. He wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. You coming? He asked, looking at Temari. Thanks, Tenten, Temari said quickly. It was honestly a huge weight off her shoulders to know that most of the people here weren't quick to hold a grudge against her, especially the ones that by all rights should have. I'll be sure to find you for that rematch once I get a new fan. Tenten watched the 2 blondes leave and let out a deep breath. She refused to say that she was scared of Naruto, but that didn't mean she wanted to be around the guy if she could help it. His reputation from the academy aside, Tenten also vividly remembered the condition he had left Neji in after the Chunin exams. She had never imagined her teammate could be bested in hand-to-hand combat like that, but to see the Hyuga get so brutally beaten was unsettling. The fact that the proctor had to step in for Neji's sake was enough to justify her wariness of Naruto. She shuddered at the memory and shook her head free of the thoughts. He didn't seem so bad in person at least, and she would be making a hefty commission on that sale, so she wasn't going to complain. As her eyes focused on where she had watched Temari leave, she couldn't help but feel a sense of worry for the Suna girl. Tenten really hoped Temari wasn't getting in over her head with this whole marriage mess. Tsunade was pissed, and for once it was in the angry way, not the drunken slob way. All of Konoha knew it too. If her services hadn't been so desperately needed at the hospital, then she would have made it her mission to remind those that needed reminding just what it was that made her so feared in the shinobi world. Lucky for them, she had been busy, until now. As her eyes burnt a hole into her old sensei's head, she could feel the worried look of Jiraiya at her back, as well as the uncaring gaze of Danzo. Why that old cripple was here to begin with was a question for later. Right now, she had more pressing matters to get to the bottom of. First and foremost, her questions about one particularly hard-to-kill genin. So, who wants to be the smart one and start telling me what I want to hear? She asked, scanning the room to see which one of these old men had the balls to speak up, noting with no small amount of amusement that Jiraiya was smart enough to not step forward. Good. He still deserved a beating for other transgressions. Well, it would help if we knew exactly what you wanted to know, Danzo said calmly. He had nothing to fear from Tsunade, he hoped. Naruto, Tsunade said simply. What the hell happened to Naruto? Hiruzen sighed deeply. This was not going to go well. On the positive side, this was still infinitely better than having this conversation with one of the boy's parents. There was an incident, he said. We have been trying to deal with the aftereffects of it, but the process is slow. I assure you he has made significant improvements in recent years. Tsunade scowled. What kind of incident? He was attacked, Jiraiya said, not willing to meet his teammates' eyes, or the eyes of anyone else for that matter. In the village, Jiraiya and Hiruzen both looked down in shame. Yes, Jiraiya said. And where the hell were you? Jiraiya was assigned to a mission out of the village, per my request, Hiruzen said. The blame was his to bear, there was no point in trying to avoid that. Well, that's just great, Tsunade said. You're both incompetent. Congratulations. That still doesn't explain the way the kid is. This is Kushina's son for gods, Sake. He should be a jumping joyful idiot. Instead, he's out having Jinchuriki-level grudge matches in populated towns, getting himself nearly killed, and apparently is locked off from accessing the fox's chakra. Do any of you have any idea what Minato and Kushina would do if they were alive to see this? It is an unfortunate outcome, that much is obvious, Danzo said. But it is still better than it could be. The boy shows no signs of mental instability, nor desires to leave or betray the village. Outside of some easily overlooked outbursts during his formative years, the boy is still full of much potential. That being said, I was not aware he was locked off from the Kyuubi's chakra. Was this a recent occurrence? Jiraiya nodded. After he lost control of himself after being attacked by Itachi, and his partner, Kisame of Kurigakure, I made the decision to lock the seal to avoid any further accidents, he said. I assure you I only had Naruto's best interests and safety in mind. I couldn't risk anything until I knew he was perfectly okay after using so much of the Biju's chakra. Tsunade scoffed. Yeah, and in the meantime, you completely overlooked just how necessary that chakra is for the kid, she said, pinching the bridge of her nose in frustration. That little safety measure put him at more risk. Do you really think depriving his body of something it has always had since the day he was born was a good idea? No wonder it's taken him so long to recover from his injuries. Any other Jinchuriki would have been up and about like nothing happened days ago. I couldn't take the chance, Tsunade, Jiraiya said sternly. It's bad enough that I wasn't here when I needed to be for the kid. I won't lose him to the fox, not any more than I already have. Okay, enough of the cryptic bullshit. What is wrong with him? Tsunade demanded. This is why she hated politics. Too much avoiding the simple explanation. We have reason to believe that Naruto is in communication with the Kyuubi, Hiruzen said, earning a strange look from his former student. During the attack, he accessed the beast's chakra. It was not enough to be any real trouble once our shinobi arrived, but he was still very young. After the attack, he became distant, scared, hateful of everyone that tried to go near him. Those assigned to watch him reported seeing Naruto talk to himself on several occasions. Nothing came of it, and his mental state improved radically in a short time, so we felt it best not to press the matter. But it is clear that the fox is at the very least trying to talk to Naruto. To what extent, we don't know, but for now it does not appear to be negatively affecting him. That isn't as comforting as I think you think it is, Tsunade grumbled. Have you gotten a Yamanaka in to check him? I can vouch for his physical health, and while he is easily the healthiest boy of his age I've seen, injuries aside, we still need to consider his mind. Hiruzen shook his head. We have kept our distance. After everything, it didn't seem right to probe his mind and invade what little safety and privacy the boy feels he has left. I've been trying to connect with him, Jiraiya added. It's painfully slow, but I think I'm making progress. His sensei, Kakashi, is also trying to earn his trust. We all want to do right by Naruto, it's just difficult, after already failing him so much. Tsunade eyed Danzo warily. And what exactly is your part to play in this mess? Danzo's face betrayed nothing of his thoughts. Truth be told, he could have very well not been here, but part of him felt he should. Someone needed to be on the Hokage's side in this room. My Anbu have been keeping watch over the boy ever since the incident, he said, not surprised when such a revelation shocked no one. Of course, he would be keeping tabs. It was who he was. It was decided that should he ever fall too far beyond help or direction that he would be brought under my care and trained. Thankfully, such methods have not been necessary. The only risk the boy presents is to himself by way of his self-imposed training and experimentation with the Kyuubi's chakra. We should really be discussing the manner of your return to Konoha, Tsunade, Hiruzen said, the topic of Naruto weighing heavily on his conscience. Have you given my offer any thought? Oh, I've thought about it all right. Thought about where you can shove it, Tsunade said. You really think you get to run this village into the ground and then palm it off to someone else to try and pick up the pieces? Fix your own damn mistakes. Or at the very least get Boy Scout here to do it for you. She gestured to Jiraiya with her last words. I need you to take the mantle so I can fix my mistakes, Hiruzen said sternly. So long as I am Hokage, my focus and responsibilities must pertain to Konoha. There are affairs I must tend to with what time I have left, and I need the time and freedom to do so. Actually, Jiraiya spoke up. I've been meaning to ask you about something for a while now, but after our little run-in with Orochimaru I feel that it would be best to get the truth now. His eyes hardened slightly as he watched his sensei sigh in preparation, clearly knowing what was about to come. Back during the invasion, Orochimaru had you cut off from the rest of the village for the duration of your fight. He even reanimated Lord First and Second from what I hear. Now, I don't want to be the first to question your strength, but how exactly did you come out of that alive? Hiruzen shook his head. He should have known that Orochimaru wouldn't let that rest. The Shiki Fujin, he said simply, noting that his students didn't look very impressed by that answer. Danzo already knew the details. Using it, I was able to seal the souls of both the first and second Hokage within the Shinigami. Orochimaru was not so easy. I was only able to seal away a portion of his soul before he fled. Hang on. That doesn't make any sense, Jiraiya interrupted. That technique sacrifices the user's soul. It's what Minato used on the Kyuubi. If you really used it, then you should be dead. And I will be, in time, Hiruzen answered, standing up and raising his shirt to show the swirling seal on his stomach. When Minato used this technique, he was facing an opponent of immeasurable strength compared to his own. The cost of the sealing was far greater than my sealing merely 2 mortal souls. As such, I have been left with more time than even I was expecting. Don't mistake my words, I am most certainly dying. Every day I feel more of myself being consumed by the Shinigami. Eventually, there will be nothing left, and my soul, along with the 2 souls sealed within me, will belong to the demon. Jiraiya and Tsunade stood in silence for a moment, taking their time to process everything. They both knew their sensei would have to kick the bucket eventually, but this was messed up even for them. So, how long do you have? Jiraiya asked. Internally his mind was chaos. As the foremost expert on seals in Konoha, even he had to admit that the Shiki Fujin was far beyond his abilities or full understanding. He suspected it was the same for Hiruzen. Sure, they could both physically perform the technique, but outside of that both were running blind. I wish I knew, Hiruzen said with a sigh. As you can imagine, the Shinigami wasn't exactly talkative at the time. I have no idea how long I have left to sort my affairs, and that is why it is best that I find my replacement soon. Tsunade took a deep breath. She would never have come back if she knew this was how bad things had gotten. But now that she was here, she might as well hear the old fool out. Old time's sake and all that crap. You might as well come clean to me about everything, she said. Starting with this political alliance shit you've pulled with that poor Suna girl. Hiruzen had the decency to look ashamed as he chuckled nervously. Of course, it was going to be a long day indeed. Temari happily slurped down the ramen almost as soon as the bowl was placed before her. Naruto had said this was the best place to eat in Konoha and so far, it wasn't disappointing. Speaking of the devil, said individual was sat beside her, also greedily consuming his own ramen. Temari's intrigue with the boy had officially been piqued. With this little ramen store being the first place in the village that he actively wanted to go to since she had met him, how could she refuse? Then it happened, the moment they walked past the privacy flaps, he smiled. Naruto smiled. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there clear as day, along with the addition of polite manners when dealing with the father-daughter duo that ran the store. So, Naruto, are you going to introduce us to your little friend here or do we have to cut you off until you relearn some manners? Ayame, the young woman serving the ramen, said sweetly. Naruto glared at Ayame, but it was obvious she neither feared him nor had any problems with treating him like a child. This is Temari, he said. Temari, this is Ayame and her father, Tuki. Happy. How was this girl still in one piece? Ayame's smile didn't falter. Yep, she chirped before quickly turning her attention to a gobsmacked Temari. So, Temari, what exactly are your intentions with our cute little Naruto here? Should we be worried? Don't get me wrong, you're pretty, but I don't think Naruto is quite old enough to deal with heartbreak just yet. Temari blushed brightly as she fought to say anything. Was this a joke? Was she being played? What? A loud thump made both girls turn to see Naruto had slammed his head into the bench, muttering to himself nonsensically. Don't mind him, he's just a little sensitive, Ayame said. You know, now that I think about it, I don't think Naruto has never brought someone here with him before. You are his friend, right? It's complicated, Temari answered. But I guess you could call us friends. Ayame smiled even wider somehow. That's excellent, she said a little too loud. See Naruto, I told you it was just a matter of time. I'm so proud of you. First bowl is on the house. Temari sat in silence as Ayame returned to cooking. The gears of her poor little mind had long since stopped moving. What the hell was going on? I'll explain later, Naruto said quietly. Just don't say anything, please. As much as a part of her was dying to find out just what was going on, Temari wasn't stupid enough to blow her chances of finding out. That, and the look in Naruto's eyes was more than enough to keep her quiet. It wasn't a pleading look, but there was something stirring behind his eyes. Something about this place was allowing him to be at ease, to let his guard down. What right did she have to disturb any of that? Temari was just surprised he would bring her here if he knew this was what was going to happen. Was he trying to tell her something? She didn't know, and it didn't matter. Not yet anyways. And so, Temari sat in relative silence, making sure not to pester Naruto while they were there, but also taking the time to politely answer Ayame's curious questions about her. When it came time to leave, Temari felt somewhat relaxed herself. The combination of good food and the infectiously bubbly personality of the ramen chefs was simply too much to not be affected by. Have a good night you two, Ayame said, waving goodbye as they went to leave. Make sure to come back soon, okay Naruto. And bring your girlfriend with you too. Goodbye, Ayame, Naruto said, quickly removing himself from the line of fire. Nice to meet you both, Temari said quickly, offering a small bow before following Naruto. As soon as they were out of the ramen shop, it was like a switch had flipped. Naruto was back to his guarded self, silently making his way through the streets and ignoring all the strange looks they were getting from the public. It took a little while before Temari noticed they weren't heading home. Where are we going? She asked. Home. Our house is that way, Temari said, pointing down a different street. She knew that it was only a recent development, but he had to have been told where he was meant to be living by now. Naruto shrugged. I still have my apartment, he said. You can have the house. He went to keep walking but was stopped as Temari grabbed his wrist and tried to lead him in the direction of the house. Emphasis on the word try. What are you doing? What the hell? You're smaller than me, how are you this strong? Temari asked. The boy simply wouldn't budge. Come on, I'm not staying that house all by myself. So, unless you want to share that tiny apartment with me. You mean you want to live with me? Naruto asked skeptically. He knew she wanted them to make things work for the sake of their respective villages, but he was expecting the bare minimum. This seemed unnecessary. They had already spent the whole day together, in clear view of the public. Was that not enough? Temari gave up trying to pull him. I've never lived alone, she said in a matter-of-fact tone. Not once since my first brother was born, and I don't intend on starting now. So, what will it be? Separate rooms in the house, or cooped up together in the apartment? It was a long shot, but Temari needed to make this work, and there was no chance she would be able to get on his good side if they were living apart the whole time. Also, wouldn't that look really weird once they were married? Appearances were important in situations like this, but not nearly as much as getting to know him was. With an exaggerated roll of his eyes, Naruto pulled his wrist free and gestured for Temari to lead the way. Separate rooms, he said. Temari was tolerable, but not that tolerable. He wondered idly if this was how Sasuke felt sometimes when dealing with the girls that always threw themselves at him. Oh well, guess it just to be an Uchiha. So, I believe you said you would explain what happened at that ramen place, Temari said sweetly as they walked. She was beyond curious by now. She wanted to know what all that was about. She needed to know. Tsuki and Ayame are nice, he said as if that explained everything. Seeing Temari's expression only grow more and more questioning, he sighed. I used to eat there when I was a kid, before, it doesn't matter. They were kind. They never turned me away, even if I couldn't afford to pay them. They are not like everyone else in this village. I can trust them. That's all. Temari nodded in understanding. That explains why you let Ayame get away with talking to you like that. They must mean a lot to you. Good to know it wasn't just so you didn't miss out on their food. A smirk quickly made its way onto her face as she looked at Naruto victoriously. Well, I guess that makes my job easy then, doesn't it? Naruto narrowed his eyes. Your job? Yeah, you know, of winning you over somehow, Temari said, her smirk never dropping as Naruto's stare intensified. Stopping in front of him, Temari looked down at Naruto, not at all bothered by the fact that he was slightly shorter than her. He still had time to grow after all, so they would likely even out soon enough. I don't want this to be a painful experience for either of us. We can play it however you want, but one way or another, we are going to have to learn to trust each other and work as a team. For our villages, but also for our own sakes. I can play my part easily enough. Can I trust you to do yours? Naruto returned the smirk. So, you want us to try and fool two entire shinobi villages? He asked in amusement. Even I don't think we could get away with that. Oh really? Temari said, her tone shifting in a way that made Naruto regret saying anything. Then I guess that means you want to do it the legit way, huh? How bold. Well, I won't complain. Could be fun, and I suppose you are kinda cute. Don't get it twisted though, I'm not just going to just roll over for you. If you're going to court me then you can do it properly. The smug smile on her face was just the icing on the cake at this point. Naruto's eye twitched. That is not what I meant, he said. You are talking as if this is going to be easy. It won't be. He knew he should have just stayed quiet when the glimmer in Temari's eyes didn't fade in the slightest at his words. Is that so? Keep in mind, I've seen your soft side now, she said with a grin, leaning in close enough to make Naruto's hair stand on end. So, she could make him nervous. That was good to know. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone, but from where I'm standing, you and me getting along could be easy. And if it's not, well, I'm not afraid of putting in some hard work where it counts. Temari flicked Naruto's forehead protector and winked at him before spinning on her heels and continuing her walk to the house, leaving Naruto to stand in the middle of the road, the faintest of blushes on his cheeks. Oh yes. If nothing else, this was going to be quite fun, for Temari that was. Naruto maybe less so. It would be frustrating for him at first, Temari was sure of that. But she could deal with that. Her sights were set now anyway, so nothing short of death could stop her from getting what she wanted. She couldn't do anything to give her brother a better life, but Naruto, there was plenty she could do for him. Now that she had confirmed that he wasn't actually that bad at all, there was no reason to hold back. Naruto was just going to have to learn to deal with her. Besides, this was supposed to be the start of her new life. Why shouldn't she have some fun with it? Naruto stood silently at the gates of Konoha, as he had for the past hour. Expecting visitors was not something he was used to, but it was a welcome change to his usual routine. Normally, Naruto didn't care to waste time standing around for nothing. It was one of the reasons he had made a point of learning Kakashi's time schedule to a T and only appearing for team meetings when absolutely necessary. Time was all he really had at this stage of his life, and he would be damned if he was going to waste it without good reason. In this particular circumstance, however, he deemed the time spent waiting to be worth it, even if only slightly. The reason for this was simple enough, if a little disturbing to those in the know. Gaara was coming to Konoha. Oh yes. The return of the Jinchuriki that had tried to murder several shinobi and lay waste to the village. Gaara had been the talk of the village for well over a week now. Ever since it was leaked that he would be part of the next delegation sent from Suna, the rumors and gossip hadn't ceased. Naruto wasn't worried. He knew Suna wasn't stupid enough to make another attempt at using the Aikibi against Konoha, and even if they were, Naruto had beaten Gaara once before, he would just do it again. Not that it would come to that. The Kyuubi had assured him that Shukaku, while arguably insane, was not foolish enough to pick a fight with the Fox's vessel again. Speaking of the Fox, we needn't wait here mindlessly for them, the Fox grumbled. I will sense when they are close. This is only wasting time. Naruto ignored the Biju. It had only been a few days since his seal had been returned to a somewhat normal state and the Fox was already making too many comments on his choices. Not to say he minded. In fact, he was glad to have the familiar voice back in his head. It just didn't help that a few weeks of silence had gotten him accustomed to having his mind to himself. Still, Jiraiya had only loosened the seal part of the way. Enough for the Fox to regain communication, but not enough for Naruto to have access to quite as much of its chakra as he had before. Years of progress would have to be painstakingly reacquired, a fact he was not happy about. As he stood, Naruto would be lucky to draw on 2 taels worth of the Kyuubi before the seal locked up. This is where we were asked to be, he said to the Fox. It's not like we could have gotten a great deal done in this time anyway. That and the fact that he was waiting here with Temari, who was proving herself to be surprisingly pleasant company most of the time. You could have continued your training, the beast argued. It wouldn't outright say it, but the Kyuubi was glad that its vessel was finally beginning to excel in his own strength. While it had been temporarily locked away, the Hokage and the Cursed Toad Sage deemed it necessary to begin Naruto's training in a more serious sense. The boy needed to learn to rely on his own strength and not that of the Fox. Their previous circumstance proved just how unreliable the seal was for them in the face of someone who knew how to mess with it. Although I guess it would be unfair to ask you to pry yourself from your newest fixation. Naruto bristled at the underhanded jab. She is not a fixation. The Kyuubi chuckled to itself. It cared little for the interactions between Naruto and his betrothed, outside of a desire to ensure such a union benefited them as much as possible. That being said, a chance to amuse itself at the expense of its host was rarely passed up. I do not care what you do with her, so long as you do not neglect our path, the Kyuubi said. With a roll of his eyes, Naruto severed the mental connection and went back to calmly waiting for the Suna delegation. Being tormented by a Biju was not on his to-do list today. Turning his attention back to the road leading up to Konoha's gate, Naruto felt the slightest of smirks tug at his lips. He was excited, much as he had been when first running into Gaara. As soon as the Kyuubi confirmed that Gaara was a Jinchuriki, the desire to pit his own strength against the Aikibi container was almost all he cared about. That sentiment was mirrored by Gaara, and when the two of them finally fought, it was as if nothing else mattered for either of them. Naruto had won, yet at the behest of the Kyuubi he had spared Gaara's life. Now, the chance to see what would happen during their second run-in was making him feel almost giddy. Perhaps they could fight again, on less lethal terms. Naruto didn't care for the concept of a rival, but having another Jinchuriki to test his strength against would be telling of where he stood. Can you try to not look so eager? Temari asked from her place beside him. You're creeping out the guards. Naruto spared a glance towards the guards manning the village entrance, causing the two men to quickly avert their gaze. Aren't you excited to see your brother? He asked. Yes, my brother. Not yours, Temari said. You shouldn't be excited to see someone who tried to kill you, and who you beat to near death only a few months ago. Excited wasn't the word Temari would have used to describe how she was feeling anyway. Nervous maybe. Unsure at best. It had been a while since she had left Suna, since she had seen her little brother. Gaara hadn't been the same after his fight with Naruto. He was still violent when provoked, more guarded after being handed the first defeat of his life, but outside of that he had become distant. How someone so closed off already could become distant, Temari didn't know. She wasn't sure how else to explain it. Temari didn't think bringing Gaara back to Konoha so soon was a good idea. Then again, greater minds were at work here, so perhaps there was a good reason. Without her father around anymore, there was no one well equipped to deal with Gaara should he have an episode. Naruto had proven capable of stepping up to that position, though the thought of Suna relying on that fact was far-fetched. At worst, Temari figured it was a last-ditched effort at a show of power from her home village. After so many blows to their strength, public image, and pride, it made sense that Suna would attempt everything they could to maintain face. Naruto shrugged. I'm allowed to want to see someone again, he said. Besides, it looks good to the public. Isn't that what you wanted? He had been doing his best to humor Temari's desire to at least look the part for this alliance. Spending time with her around Konoha, training with her in the public training grounds, anything to give the appearance that they were getting along swimmingly, as much as he could stomach it that was. That wasn't to say they weren't getting along, they were. It was just that selling that idea to those watching required more effort than either of the blondes were happy with. Not that their opinion mattered. Each of their respective villages had an expectation of them, they were merely doing their best to meet those expectations. Good point, Temari mumbled. One of the only reasons she was waiting here in the first place was to properly greet the delegation and impart the impression that things were going flawlessly. This was, after all, the final delegation to be sent regarding the matter of the alliance. Before the week was over, she and Naruto would be married in the eyes of both Suna and Konoha, and the two villages would renew their bonds stronger than before. Appearances were more important than ever. You aren't going to try and fight him again, are you? Temari wasn't sure if Gaara wouldn't also be looking for a rematch. If either of them wanted it, there was little chance of stopping it. No, Naruto said. I proved I was stronger. It's settled. Temari sighed in relief. Good. In that case, just let me do all the talking and don't give him a reason to start something. I'll handle all the political stuff. Naruto nodded. He wasn't about to argue such a good deal. A voice in the back of his mind caused his eyes to narrow slightly. They are here, he said. Gaara is not with them. True enough, within minutes the delegation was standing at the gates being screened for entry. It was mostly just a group of old men and women, as had been the case every other time. Some of the members Temari recognized, others she didn't. Her sensei, Baki, was present again this time, as was her brother Kankuro, but like Naruto had said, Gaara was noticeably missing. Baki sensei, Temari greeted with a polite bow. I thought Gaara would be with you. Baki frowned and turned his one eye back towards the way they had come. He is, he said. There were some complications coming here. Gaara stayed behind to deal with it. He should catch up soon. With that said, Baki took the time to observe Naruto with no attempt at hiding his suspicion. That the boy was here with Temari was promising enough from his view. Is everything here well? Temari smiled. Things are good, she replied, knowing what her sensei was truly asking. It was no secret that Baki cared more for Temari's safety and well-being than he did the security of the alliance. She wouldn't put it past him to do something extreme if Naruto stepped out of line. Thankfully that wouldn't be necessary. Follow me. I'll escort you all to where you will be staying this time. I can make arrangements for food if anyone needs some. Temari paused to nudge Naruto and get his attention. You waiting here? Naruto looked at the horizon for a moment before shaking his head. I'll see you at home. Gaara will come find me when he gets here. Baki watched Naruto vanish in a body flicker. Should I be concerned that he is waiting for Gaara? He asked. No, at least I don't think so, Temari said. Should we be concerned about Gaara? No. Temari frowned. She trusted her sensei, but his tone left much to be desired. Still, she wasn't going to argue with him about it. If Gaara was going to be a problem, it was already too late to do anything about it. They would just wait and see and react accordingly. Come on then, she said, getting the whole delegation to follow her as she led them to a different hotel. It was standard practice to always move visitors of importance around whenever they visited, especially political parties that didn't fully consist of shinobi. While a ninja would be able to take care of themselves, those not trained to look for and survive possible assassinations were at risk. If a village only ever placed such vulnerable people in one location every time, then a target would eventually be painted there. No amount of preparation or thorough combing of a building was perfect, so unless someone wanted to booby trap every single hotel, this annoying little farce was the best bet at stopping someone from causing some political chaos. You and the Uzumaki are living together? Baki asked as they walked, eyeing his former student carefully. He knew such a thing was inevitable, and yet the time frame still surprised him. The fact that the two of them seemed to be cooperating was also a pleasant surprise for the Suna Jonin. Yeah, have been for a couple of weeks now, Temari replied. What a strange couple of weeks it had been too. Naruto wasn't difficult to live with by any means. In fact, it was better than trying to sleep while wondering if you would get crushed by sand at any moment. It was just that Temari had been finding it hard to wrap her head around the whole thing. She was officially living with her husband-to-be, admittedly in separate rooms, and the realization of what that would eventually entail was creeping up on her. Temari had thought she was adequately steeled in her resolve and prepared for anything, but she was quickly finding that part of her was still a teenage girl. It's actually going rather smoothly, she said. Baki didn't need to know about her personal problems. She would perform her duties to Suna regardless of her own mental shortcomings. And what of the incident that occurred with the Kyuubi? He asked. The Jinchuriki's little rampage had not gone unnoticed by the rest of the world. News had traveled far, and it had traveled quickly. Such was the reason behind the haste for the marriage to be officiated. Should the Uzumaki boy die or be captured after the alliance was sealed, it would be of little consequence. Before, however, well, it wouldn't come to that. Were you harmed? Temari shrugged. Nothing I couldn't handle. Besides, I'm uniquely used to Jinchuriki going a little nuts, she said with a chuckle, trying to put a little humor on the situation. It wasn't surprising that her home village had heard about Naruto's rampage. So long as she downplayed it as best she could, it wouldn't be a problem for the alliance. Don't worry, sensei. I've got this. You just make sure that everything back home stays on track and it'll all work out for everyone. I'm sure of it. Baki allowed silence to take hold of them once more as he followed his student. He knew things were likely harder than she was letting on, but such was the life of a shinobi. Temari may have been young, and Baki could only wish he had more time to prepare her for life to come. However, right now he was as proud of her as any sensei could be. He could only hope that her position in Konoha wouldn't impede her career as an exemplary shinobi. Naruto didn't have to wait long before the Kyuubi warned him of the presence of its kin on the village outskirts. He knew Gaara would come looking for him first. It was only unknown as to what end their little reunion would lead to. Personally, Naruto hoped it wouldn't come to violence for once. He had already proven that he would be the victor, and there were other things he wished to do with his fellow Jinchuriki. Namely, talk. While normally he was happy to keep his conversation skills within his own mind, it would be unwise to pass up the chance to actually talk to someone else similarly afflicted as he was. To get an understanding of how another like him had grown, how they were treated, what they wanted in life. Naruto was curious, and his curiosity would be sated even if he had to beat it out of Gaara. Patiently, Naruto sat and waited on the roof of his and Temari's new home. Living with Temari had proven to be a pleasant enough experience so far. She kept to herself, as did he. They never went into each other's rooms. And in return for Naruto handling all the menial tasks via his clones, Temari had taken to ensuring the two ate well. Outside of occasionally being woken up, and an incident involving a bathroom door that hadn't been locked, it was going much better than Naruto had expected. So long as he didn't have to kill Temari's little brother, Naruto foresaw things continuing as they had. Uzumaki. Speaking of Gaara, Naruto greeted calmly, not bothering to turn around to look at the boy. He wasn't being immediately set upon by sand, so that was a good sign. Enjoy your trip. The stench of blood was not lost on Naruto. Gaara frowned. They were weak. Their lives offered little to satiate Shukaku. Well, at least he stopped referring to the Aikibi as mother, Naruto thought to himself, ignoring the Kyuubi's snickering in the back of his mind. Are you here to try and kill me? He asked. No. Then why are you here? Gaara took a moment, his eyes going distant as he tried to make sense of the furious screaming in the back of his mind. I couldn't kill you, he said. One tail. That is all you used of your Biju. A mere fraction of the Kyuubi's power to defeat me, to defeat Shukaku. I want to know how. Naruto sighed deeply. Why do you kill people? It is what I am. A killer. A weapon, Gaara said. My father created me to kill, and so that is what I will do. I will prove my existence, my purpose. I will become the greatest weapon Suna has ever known. Only then will they see. Only then will I have proved myself, my existence. Naruto turned a blank stare at his fellow Jinchuriki. Is that it? He asked. It wasn't the worst reason he had heard of. Some people simply killed for the fun of it. At least Gaara was attempting to prove something, regardless of how twisted such an ideal had left him. Do you not understand? The redhead asked. You are the same. A weapon for your village. A Jinchuriki. Sacrificed for the sake of those that will never appreciate you. Do you not kill for the same reason? Gaara had a point. Naruto wouldn't deny that. The Jinchuriki were weapons, whether they wanted to be or not, regardless of if they were used as such or not. A kunai may have started out its life as a farming tool, but once it was brandished as a weapon, the world never saw it the same way again. Naruto had no doubt that the first Jinchuriki were made with good intentions. Then their potential as nigh unstoppable weapons had been discovered, and that was the end of it. They would never be more than that in the eyes of the shinobi world, no matter what they did. Even now, in Konoha, Naruto was just an asset to be used for benefit. His shinobi training, the political marriage, neither of these were things he wanted. They were merely expected of him, and Naruto needed to follow along for the sake of his continued existence. A Jinchuriki that didn't fall into line was quickly replaced. Or worse, as Gaara's treatment had shown. I understand, Naruto said, ignoring the smile that formed on Gaara's face. But I don't kill like you do. It seems tasteless. Why kill someone just because they are weaker than you? Wouldn't it be better to beat them and have your strength remembered for the rest of their life? A living reminder of your existence. That seemed to register in the redhead's mind as he frowned and appeared to be having some form of internal argument. Perhaps all the years of having the Aikibi screaming in his head and keeping him from sleep had done some serious damage to his understanding of the world and himself. Poor kid. The fact that he chose to avoid sleep was all Naruto needed to know to understand that Gaara wasn't a bad person deep down. He didn't desire to lose control. You should talk to your sister. Gaara snapped to attention. Why? She loves you. No one loves me, Gaara said coldly. Is that what the Aikibi told you, or your father? Naruto asked. Have you even stopped and tried to be anything other than a weapon? To be something other than what your father wanted you to be? Do you even want to be a weapon? Gaara paused as his sand shifted uncomfortably against his skin. Even now his second layer of defense was clinging to him. There was never a moment where he let his guard down, not truly. He had no intentions of being vulnerable ever again. Even still, I don't know, he said unsurely. He hadn't known anything else, hadn't been allowed to know anything else. Ever since his effectiveness as a weapon had proven a failure all those years ago, his father had done nothing but attempt to rid the village of his mistake. Between barely sleeping, the screaming in his mind, the ever-escalating dangerous missions, and the assassins sent after him, Gaara didn't have time to stop and think about what he wanted. He only knew what he needed to do, what he needed to be to survive. Naruto smirked. So Gaara could think for himself. Good. Your father, the Kage, he's dead now, isn't he? He asked, getting a nod. Then you're free, right? Suna still needs a weapon. Suna just got it handed to them even with you as their weapon, Naruto argued. Your father is dead, the invasion failed even with you, and now your sister is stuck here trying to mend a fragile alliance. The last thing Suna wants right now is to deal with you. That's why you're here, isn't it? Gaara glared at Naruto. He was right. This little venture away from his village had been a good excuse to get him away from them for a while. It helped that they could use the cover of a protection detail mission, but in the end, no one actually tried to hide the real reason behind it. The Chunin exams had proven that he wasn't unstoppable, and with that realization fewer ninja had been sent to try and end his life. It was a jarring change to his usual routine. Why didn't you kill me? He asked. You could have, easily. Anyone else would have taken the chance to do so. Why didn't you? Like I said, I don't kill like you do, Naruto said. I will kill anyone I need to, however I have to. But you, I didn't need to kill you. I didn't want to kill you. Why would I kill the only other person I have met who could understand what my life is like? Or would you rather I had? I wouldn't have hesitated to kill you. Why would I not expect the same in return? Gaara said. All those before you have tried to kill me, and I have killed them all in return. But you. Naruto grinned as he stood up and took a few steps towards Gaara, his teeth baring slightly more as his fellow Jinchuriki took an unconscious step back. You think you have to prove your existence by killing anything that threatens you. But I don't. I don't have to prove anything, he said, his eyes flashing red. And neither do you. We exist, Gaara, as much as the Biju sealed within us. Do you think they care what others think of them? Do you think it matters to them how powerful they are? Why should we, their Jinchuriki, care about anything that is beneath the beasts we contain? He reached out and placed a hand on Gaara's shoulder, the sand parting beneath his fingers. You aren't a weapon, Gaara. I am not a weapon. Gaara was doing his best not to recoil at Naruto's hands so effortlessly bypassing his sand. Even the voice of Shukaku had gone mysteriously silent the moment the blonde made contact with him. Was this the power of the Kyuubi? What are we? He asked. Naruto's eyes lost their red hue as he withdrew his hand and smiled at Gaara. Whatever we choose to be, he said. All we need is the strength to make it so. They stayed in silence for a while until Gaara left without a word, leaving behind a still smiling Naruto. Whatever was going through Gaara's head, it wasn't pretty. That tended to happen when someone had to rethink their life all of a sudden. Still, Naruto had hope that he had gotten through to the boy. It wouldn't matter if he hadn't, but having another Jinchuriki on his side would be quite useful in the future. Helping Gaara stabilize himself was more than just tactical though, it was what felt right. No one else was going to go out of their way to help him. No one else, save for maybe Temari, cared what happened to Gaara. As a Jinchuriki himself, Naruto had to care. It did also help that the whole idea had been a work of two minds. Want to tell me what you were doing there? He asked the fox. The Kyuubi chuckled from within its cage. Just having a word with my little brother, nothing more, it said. Should I ask you the same? I don't remember the plan being to try and talk the boy down. Naruto shrugged. He will be more useful to us if he tones the murdering down. It would be a shame if one of those assassins got lucky, or if Suna managed to transfer the Aikibi. We would have to start over with the new Jinchuriki. Good. You're learning, the fox said. You need not worry. Shukaku will be much more cooperative in the future. The boy will only improve from here on. A useful ally should things take a turn. The Kyuubi was pleased in the knowledge that it alone wouldn't have to concoct the bulk of the pair's plans. Naruto was still young, but he was a good listener and decent enough learner. The fox had little doubt that Naruto would surpass all but the strongest of shinobi, under his guidance that was. Should we worry about that? Naruto asked curiously, turning to stare at a random tree in the distance. Without a Byakugan it was impossible to see anything at that distance from behind the foliage, but Naruto didn't need to see someone to know that he was being watched. Thankfully, the watcher took the hint that they weren't as hidden as they had thought and disappeared a moment later. No, the Kyuubi grumbled. They will never stop watching, no matter what we do. Best to ignore it. If the Hokage were going to do something, it would have been done already. Naruto frowned but didn't argue. It was true that whenever he wasn't under the constant eye of his sensei or Jiraiya, he was being tailed by Anbu, only for nothing to come of it. Even when he dared to train with the Biju's chakra, nothing ever happened. While the Hokage's habit of keeping his distance was a great relief, it did raise many questions as to what angle the old man was trying to play. At least Kakashi and Jiraiya were much more upfront with their intentions, as annoying as the two perverts could be at times. Hopping down from the roof, he set off towards the hotel that he knew the Suna delegates had been taken to. Temari hadn't returned home yet, so it wouldn't hurt to check in and make sure she was alright. One could only imagine the headache and accusations he would have to suffer should something happen to her so close to the wedding. The day had come far too quickly for Temari's liking. Naruto's too, if the constant scowl on the boy's face was any indication. Sadly, the only thing the two of them could take solace in was the knowledge that they were both suffering through today. Temari barely managed to banish the butterflies from her stomach as they both stood there outside the council meeting room, patiently waiting to be called in. While being before a village leader and its more notable members was not usually something that bothered her, this particular time was the exception. Contrary to whatever Temari may have been expecting to occur on the day of the wedding, the event was actually far more discreet than the name implied. She supposed that made sense given that it was the marriage of two shinobi, something that was rarely a public affair. Still, this was an alliance-forging bond between two of the great shinobi villages. She had expected some form of celebration or public announcement. Instead, what they were told to prepare for was no more than a slightly larger council meeting of sorts. Many important figures from Konoha would be present, along with the select members of Suna that had traveled here for this exact reason. The event needed witnesses on both sides. Holding up all right, Koharu said suddenly, appearing from seemingly nowhere and getting a small, surprised jump out of Temari. Naruto didn't react at all to the old woman's presence. Lady Koharu, Temari greeted politely, giving the elder a perplexed look. Shouldn't you be? They have enough dusty old bags in there to give the Tsuchikage a run for his famed jutsu style, the woman said with a laugh. I'll attend the ceremony, but all this needless chin-wagging can carry on without me. Temari smiled at the old woman's relaxed demeanor. It was nice to know that not all village elders were stuck up. Is there anything I should be prepared for? She asked. There was still a lot she didn't actually know about how this was all supposed to go down. Her focus, outside of trying to get close to Naruto, had been on the political deal side of things. Temari wanted to make sure that she wasn't agreeing to be a pawn in a brutally one-sided deal, and thankfully she wasn't. Konoha was surprisingly forgiving and lenient with their demands. Regrettably, that focus had left her with no time to look into what the actual marriage aspect entailed, hence her surprise that it hadn't been a bigger affair for the village.